Critical Role, everyone's favorite stream Dungeons & Dragons game featuring our famous and nerdy-ass voice actors, is 101 episodes into its third campaign, and man, things are starting to get absolutely bonkers. Recently, Critical Role just finished their 3-part miniseries known as Downfall, featuring the GOAT himself, Brennan Lee Mulligan. Downfall telling the story of the fall of the great magical flying city of Aeor during the Calamity. The Calamity being a grand war between the gods, and holy shit, was it fantastic! However, this miniseries has revealed some drastic new major information for the story of Campaign 3 and the world of Exandria, and has caused many in the Critical Role fanbase to wonder if Campaign 3 might just be the last Critical Role campaign as we know it. Hello everyone, I'm Finn. Welcome back to FinFilms. Join me today as I discuss one of the craziest Critical Role theories I've ever seen: the end of Critical Role as we know it. Oh, and obviously, guys, spoiler warning. So if you're familiar with my channel at all, you know that I am a massive Dungeons & Dragons nerd, a massive Critical Role fan who's been watching since day one, and a complete stan for Brennan Lee Mulligan. In my opinion, EXU Calamity was the best content that Critical Role has ever made so far. So to me, the prospect of Brennan once again returning to the Critical Role table as a dungeon master is something that I have been waiting years for since EXU Calamity ended. So when I heard that he was again returning for Downfall, the mini-series detailing the story of the downfall of the flying city of Aeor, I absolutely lost my shit. Okay, so before we get into this theory, which tells the end of Critical Role, first we need to do a little speed run on the events of Campaign 3 and the story so far. The story largely focuses around the grand plot of a man, well, I should say an elf, an ancient archmage named Ludinus Delath, one of the last surviving members of the flying city of Aeor that was struck down by the gods during the Calamity. This ancient magic city having developed a weapon with the ability to destroy a god. Ludinus, having seen the downfall of his people and the destruction wrought upon the world of Exandria by the gods during the Calamity, wanted to take revenge against said gods, and in his mind to free the people of Exandria from their oppressors, the oppressors who created them and hold them down in chains, aka the gods. His plan, then, is to release this ancient entity, an entity known as Predathos, a being that we learn over the course of Campaign 3 is an apex predator to divine beings, an entity that feeds and hunts the divine, an entity that long ago hunted the gods of Exandria and drove them to the world of Exandria. The gods long ago coming together to seal this being away, seal it away in a chunk of Exandria that would become the planet's second moon, the red moon of Ruidus. Currently in our story, Ludinus has met the party in the broken remains of the flying city of Aeor and Isocross. Here, he offers to show the party Bell's Hells, something that he believes will help them understand his reasoning, his want for destroying the gods and releasing this god-eating entity. Here's where we enter into the Downfall miniseries, as it is explained that Aeor contained a device that recorded all of the memories of all of those who entered into this city. So what we are watching in the Downfall miniseries, the party Bell's Hells are also watching. Are you following me so far? Downfall then tells the story of the fall of Aeor, the last of the great magocracy flying cities during the Calamity. The cast of Downfall playing the prime deities of Exandria in mortal form, as the prime deities and their brethren the Betrayer gods had learned that Aeor was building a god-killing weapon. These gods, seeing this existential threat, brokered a truce with one another until they could deal with this problem. The gods then devising a plan to take mortal form, living out mortal lives, so they could bypass this divine repelling wars that Aeor possessed, to sneak aboard the flying city and destroy the weapon and all knowledge of it. Obviously though, this does not go according to plan. The Betrayer gods doing classic Betrayer gods things, Asmodeus, the Lord of Lies, double-crossing his prime deity brethren, and attempting to use the Factorum Malleus, the god hammer, the god-killing weapon, on his prime deity brethren. This then forced the prime deity's hand, who were forced to bring down this flying city, crashing it into the ground in Isocross, killing all of those on board, all of those who were not able to escape magically, but not before an archmage named Selena, in a last-ditch effort, cast a wish spell, her wish being that every single mage on Aeor will be imbued with the knowledge of this weapon, and presumably how to construct it, so that at some point in the future, one of the last denizens of Aeor could ultimately enact their plan and finish what they started. Are you taking notes? Did you get all that? Really, in my mind, there's a couple of major takeaways that we get from the Downfall miniseries and really Campaign 3 so far. Number one, the gods are really not that much different from the mortal beings that they have created. At the end of the day, like the mortal beings, they are also flawed entities, while being extremely powerful, yes, but first and foremost, they are beings who love and care for their own family. In many ways, the gods of Exandria are kind of like the Greek pantheon. They are this big family that has all sorts of different, complicated dynamics with one another, but at the core, they are a family who love one another, hence why the prime deities never sought to destroy their betrayer brethren, even though they have betrayed them multiple times. Instead, the prime deities sought to seal the betrayers away, because they could not bring themselves to destroy their godkin, their brethren. Even though the war between the prime deities and betrayer gods ultimately led to 2/3 of the population of Exandria dying during the calamity, the gods didn't want to destroy their own kin, even with all of this death and destruction. As well, they believed that it was important for them all to remain alive in case Predathos should ever return. So in many ways, the image of the gods, the image of the prime deities that has been formed kind of in the mortals' minds, and in our minds as well as the audience, is not exactly correct. They are flawed beings that are much more similar to their mortal creations than I think they would even like to admit, which also makes the ascension of the Raven Queen from a mortal mage to a god even more kind of relatable, as it is possible, we learn that it is possible for a mortal to ascend to godhood. Again, there really not being that much difference between the gods and the mortals that they have created. Second takeaway, Ludinus, from his point of view, in my opinion, is pretty damn justified in his hatred of the gods and his view of them as oppressors. I mean, if you are extremely charitable to Ludinus and his point of view, it's, to me, completely reasonable to understand why he would view the gods as oppressors, dictators, and ultimately destroyers. In his own words, when the divine threatens your families, your children, the very future of life as you know it, they reveal themselves as the enemy. Again, we need to remember that 2/3 of the population of Exandria would die in the calamity, this war between prime deities and betrayer gods, and ultimately the fallout of said war would leave Exandria scarred and changed forever, Exandria entering into an arcane dark ages of sorts, with many secrets of magic and technology ultimately lost forever post-calamity, as the world attempted to rebuild itself. So while Ludinus may not have all of the information, while he may not actually understand what the fallout of the releasing of Predathos would have on the world as we know it if the gods were to be destroyed, his motivation for doing so, I think, is pretty damn understandable. So then, with all of this context, we can finally delve into this theory, the theory of the end of Critical Role. Shoutouts to Reddit user Pacman529 for coming up with this absolutely insane theory. I'll leave the link to the Reddit thread for this theory in the description down below if you want to go read it and check it out yourself. So according to this theory, according to our Reddit user Pacman, the events of Downfall were meant to be Matt giving our party a justification to, in his words, push the red big button that is the releasing of Predathos and ultimately the destruction of the gods. As he and many other people in the community have speculated that this campaign, Campaign 3, will be the final Critical Role campaign that is set in Exandria, and that all future campaigns will ultimately be set in the world of Daggerheart, Matt Mercer's newest fantasy RPG system, and that Critical Role will ultimately move away from Dungeons & Dragons as a game system, and that this is a way for them to kind of go out with a bang, to set Exandria to rest in an ultimate kind of grand plot story narrative way. Or at the very least, to give the players the option to ultimately make a cataclysmic world-changing decision. I know it sounds absolutely crazy, but the thing is, he actually puts forward some actual strong, compelling evidence for this theory. Evidence number 1, the Tree of Atrophy gave our party a prophecy that seemed to imply that it might not be the end of the world if Predathos were to be released. The eyes close and you feel a wind pull in once more. The air goes cold. For a brief moment, you almost feel a shared vision. You see the thin line of the bloody bridge widen. You see the skies crack. You see beings of impossible fathomability, light and shadow alike, stepping from the heavens. You see a lattice of infinite gold apparate and shatter. You see the lights and shadows leave, chased by the glow of endless red. As those lights fade, left below, the blue waters and the green of the world lay bare, and the vision pulls away. Evidence number 2, this tree also hints that the world of Exandria itself would be fine without the gods existing on it. I cannot say whether the gods are a blessing or a bane upon the world. Some seek to harmonize with the way of things, others wish to subjugate or destroy them. With each epoch, the pendulum swings, the titans are gone, all that remains is what was before and what was after. The divine are pilgrims made idols. Refugees become conquerors. They are not makers, but crafters, shapers, and their devotees follow in their image. They take what is found and remake it into new, sometimes beautiful, sometimes terrible. Is that their nature, or are they a reflection of us? Basically, the tree saying that Exandria seemingly would be fine if the gods were to leave. As we know, Exandria existed long before the gods ever got there, Exandria being a place of elemental chaos ruled by the great primordial titans until the arrival of the gods. Evidence number 3, this tree told them that lewdness is bad and that the party is going to have to make a difficult decision in the future. Lewdness should be stopped. Not all would disagree with his reasoning. It may very well be there are harder choices for you to make the further you draw close to your destiny. Number 4, the story of downfall was pretty damning for the gods in the eyes of many Exandrian mortals. I mean, literally, we see one of these worshippers of the gods in the story of downfall mind basically completely shatter once they are actually presented with the gods in person, and they realize that this image of the gods that they had been led to believe is nothing like how they actually are. That the gods themselves weren't willing to engage in this war that ultimately led to the 2/3 death of the population of Exandria and to seal the gods away instead of to actually destroy them, though in their minds they believe this is justified. Number 5, we've had several examples of godless, divine-based casters in our story, primarily FCG Fresh Cut Grass and Xerxes from EXU Calamity, these two characters lending evidence to this idea that the gods are not necessary for mortals to gain access to divine magic and to be divine casters, so it seems as though Exandria would be fine in the long run, regardless of what decision Bell's Hells ultimately make as to the fate of the gods. And finally, I will add my own evidence to this theory, that Matt has already shown us in the past that he is completely willing to destroy the things he has created, if we remember back to Campaign 1 with the Chroma Conclave arc. As well, we have seen Critical Role somewhat distance themselves from D&D and Wizards of the Coast, specifically in how they've changed all of the names of the gods away from the Faerun names in kind of Wizards of the Coast lore to different names in the Critical Role lore, Exandrian lore. So then, I guess that's case closed. It seems that regardless of the choice that Bell's Hells make, either to save the gods or to release Predathos on the gods and have them destroyed, Campaign 3 will be the final campaign that is set in Exandria, and using Dungeons & Dragons as a system, which in many ways is the end of Critical Role as we know it. Well, not quite. While this theory is a really good one, I do have to say, as someone who loves a good theory, and I think that it does have some pretty compelling evidence to support it, I do think that there are a couple of major flaws with it. The most glaring flaw of which being that Exandria, and specifically the Critical Role campaign, are this company's money maker, their bread and butter. While we have seen Critical Role diversify its content over the last couple of years with Candela Obscura, Daggerheart, Myths, and all sorts of other kind of Critical Role miniseries, at its core, Critical Role's main campaign, their main source of money maker, their main revenue driver, is their most popular series, the Critical Role campaign. It's not even close. This is what drives all of their merch sales, this is what gets all of their views, and lest we not forget, this campaign is the main reason why they have their own animated series and their deal with Amazon Prime to create Legends of Vox Machina. And I imagine the plan would be, once Legend of Vox Machina ends, to begin work on the Legend of the Mighty Nine for Campaign 2, and ultimately I imagine the Legend of Bell's Hells in the future for Campaign 3, if they still continue to create these animated series with Amazon. We also can't forget that Critical Role and the World of Exandria literally have their own D&D source book. They literally have their own Wizards of the Coast official source book. While yes, they have released their own tabletop RPG system, specifically a fantasy system called Daggerheart, which possibly could be a competitor to Dungeons & Dragons, maybe in the long run, their partnership with Wizards of the Coast has been like extremely profitable and fruitful for the Critical Role team. So to me, it would seem kind of unlikely that at this point they would basically throw all of that away to switch over to Daggerheart as a system, as at this moment in time, Daggerheart has, well, it hasn't really been proven that it's going to be as popular as D&D. At the end of the day, we need to remember that Critical Role, while being an amazing story and amazing Dungeons & Dragons campaign, is also a business. It is a content creation platform at its core. So to me then, it seems extremely unlikely that this will be the last Critical Role campaign. The last campaign set in Exandria, and the last campaign to use Dungeons & Dragons as a system, whether it's 5e or whatever other kooky weird system that Wizards of the Coast has cooked up next. So while yes, it is possible that this will be the last campaign set in Exandria, the last Critical Role campaign as we know it, I do think that it is unlikely. To me, it just doesn't make sense financially for them as a business to do something like this. However, I do think that this theory is right about some of the story elements of the game and possibly the kind of greater impact on the story of Exandria. To me, it very much does see like the party are going to be presented with a potentially world-changing choice that they're going to have to make, a choice that will ultimately change the world of Exandria forever for future campaigns and stories. The choice being to stop lewdness, to stop Predathos and save the gods, or to release Predathos and ultimately have a world of Exandria that no longer contains gods as we know it, or at least the set of gods as we know it. Regardless of what choice they make though, I do think that Critical Role will ultimately have a Campaign 4, most likely set in Exandria, but a Campaign 4 that is shaped by the choices of our party in Campaign 3. While I absolutely love this theory, and I do think that there are some really interesting elements of evidence that do support it, ultimately, I think that Critical Role is going to continue as we know it. I think they're going to continue on with Dungeons & Dragons as a system, at least for the foreseeable future, and I can't see them really stepping away from the world of Exandria. While the world of Exandria might ultimately be changed forever by the choices of Bell's Hells in Campaign 3, to me, it would just be really shocking if this were to be the last campaign set in Exandria, the last Critical Role campaign as we know it. Ultimately though, these are just my thoughts and opinions, and obviously this theory is just the thoughts of opinions of a very dedicated fan in the Critical Role subreddit. Shout out to you, Pac-Man, for coming up with this awesome theory. You guys know, if you watch my channel, I'm a big fan of theories. I love some 5-head tinfoil hat moments when it comes to Critical Role, and just any theories in general when it comes to lore and things like that. I'm absolutely loving Campaign 3. I absolutely loved Downfall. It was a lot of fun. Again, anytime we get Brandon Lee Mulligan in the Critical Role DM seat, I think it's just an amazing time, combining Brennan's amazing DMing skills with the beautiful, well fleshed out world of Exandria, and obviously a cast of talented actors, amazing actors to go along to just wrap it all together. Again though, guys, these are just my thoughts and opinions, so feel free to let me know yours in the comment section down below. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as that is the easiest way to help support me and to put this video into the algorithm. If you did enjoy this video, then why don't you check out some of my other content on screen now, whether it's my other D&D content or my many other Critical Role videos, like my Critical Role lore series. As always, guys, I hope to see you in the next one. Stay safe out there, drink your water, hug your mother. Until next time, peace, love, adu.